Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Board Games Hitting My Table. So in this series I take a look at all of the non-new to me board games that I've been playing over the last couple of weeks. This episode covering the first half of July 2023. Now I don't have too many games here to talk about, so it shouldn't be too long. But before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in my show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's get started with Elysium. So I played a two-player game of Elysium, and I recently covered this one on the channel. It's a kind of tableau builder card drafting game, as you are drafting these cards using quite a cool mechanism where you can see all the cards are color coded, and you need to have the matching pillar on your player board if you are able to draft these. But as soon as you draft a card, you have to give one of them up, making your options more limited. Then all these cards will do different things, giving you instant abilities, ongoing abilities, once per game abilities, all the things you can imagine. There's variable setups depending on what kind of game that you want. Now, there's one part of this game I absolutely love, and it's a mechanism I enjoy in general, where you can exploit the abilities of these cards, but as soon as you convert them into victory points, you can no longer use those powers, and vice versa. You know, they're not worth any points until you convert them. So it really is that trade-off. And the game does actually tick by really quickly. So you need to be making sure that you are converting cards into points at the first opportunity and giving up the powers that you can probably afford to forsake. This is a game that I think is solid. You know, this is, I think I described it in my last episode's top 10 ranking video. I said it was a near miss, and I think that is definitely the case. I don't think this is going to be one that's going to stick around for me, because I think that although there is that bit of variability in the different decks, it still does feel pretty similar. And to be honest, I was more focused on always collecting the points rather than the cards themselves. And I didn't really find that I would really feel like I would need to use a card's power for ages. I was more focused on just converting it into points at the first opportunity. And if it had a power on it, then so be it, that's good anyway. So for that reason, it didn't really grab me to the degree that I would like. I can see objectively that it's a solid game. I can certainly see why more card-driven players would enjoy this one. But yeah, I do like it, but I think I would lean towards maybe something like Coco Pelli before this one. But it's a solid game, and I would say, you know, if you can find it for a good price and if it appeals to you, then give it a look. But that is Elysium. I've also played some more games of The Number. So The Number seems to be getting a bit of, press at the moment, I suppose, because I think Dice Tower did a review and completely trashed this game. They did not like it at all. I am definitely a contrarian to that. I think this game is wonderful. So this is a game where you are trying to write a unique 3-digit number. Now, the higher the number, it means the potential more points you'll get, but you are at a much bigger risk of being sabotaged by players beneath you in that number order, because as soon as there's a duplicate number written down, then your number gets taken out of the mix. I played several games of this, and usually at 3 players, and yeah, I just had a blast with it. You know, sometimes you can go through this game without getting any points, sometimes you can do extremely well. Yes, it does have a lot of wackiness, it's quite chaotic, it's quite random at times, but you can make calculated decisions, especially later in the game, and try to get into the head of your opponents. Check out my review of it. I think I did it part of a four filler game reviews. But yeah, be open-minded with this one. It's definitely got some appeal to it, to the right players, and don't just dismiss it based on some popular reviews, because it is, I think it's a great game. That is The Number. I played some more Splitto. So Splitto is a game that came out to relatively little fanfare last year. This is a card drafting game, but one where you are working with each of your neighbours. So you are building up points between you and the players to your left and to your right. And then at the end of the game, both of those scoring piles will be multiplied with each other. So you either got the actual cards themselves with numbers and different suits on them, or you have these scoring objective cards, which will do a ton of different things, such as saying if you have the majority of 4s in this pile, you get X amount of points. If you have all these suits, you'll get X amount of points. If you have fewer than 11 cards in this pile, then you'll get X amount of points, and so on. So it really is a balancing act of trying to max every, or both piles adjacent to you. But because the card play is simultaneous, you need to kind of not sabotage each other's goals, because sometimes you might say, I'll play a card that says no 4s in this pile, and then my opponent played a 4, or my opponent / teammate plays a 4, so we've kind of ruined each other's turn. But I like this one. It uses that, that between two cities mechanism really well. It's ultra quick. I do need to review it, but it probably won't be an in-depth review. And yeah, I've enjoyed it each time I've played it. So that is Splitto. And I think the last game we had of this one, we ended up going down to a tiebreaker, me and one of my opponents, because we both had the same multipliers on each side of us. And it came down to who played the fewest cards as a tiebreaker. So I just missed out on a tiebreaker with this one. But lovely game, that is Splitto. Talking about lovely games, I played a 3-player game of Namalia. This is one that came really high on my another ranking video, and I think I did release a review of this one. A very simple game as you are trying to overlap these cards, trying to adhere to these public objectives. Now, the actual setup we just played in this last game we played was probably the hardest one I've played so far, because there's one objective that said you had to have pairs of animals next to each other on a horizontal line, but that really did conflict with the other goals we had, and it was quite difficult to not play a card and sabotage or not sabotage your own objectives, which is what this game is all about. So I did talk about in my review how you could tailor the difficulty of the gameplay and how simple the game is in relation to that brain-burnery nature or that frustration of how to optimally place each card. So as a family game, this one is wonderful, so flexible, very versatile in who you can play this with, the player count. It's just wonderful. I love this one. That is Namalia. Continuing to enjoy it. Staying with the lighter games now, we played another 3-player game of Spicy. Spicy, a complete bluffing game as you're shedding cards from your hand. Either you can be honest, but you can lie about the suit or the number of that card, and you're trying to shed through all the cards as quickly as you can to get victory points, essentially. But you can challenge the cards that other people have played, because bluffing is a huge part of this one. You do not show the people the cards you're shedding, but you can openly challenge those cards. If you're right, then you'll get a big chunk of points, as in the cards that have been played. And if you're wrong, you'll have to draw more cards into your hand, which is not a good thing. That is essentially the gist of the game. Probably my favourite bluffing game, or at least one of my favourite bluffing games that I've played. Maybe Skull would be in competition with this one. But yeah, always guaranteed a good time, and the latest play proved that. Another game we came right down to the wire, and that I love the escalation of, as more and more cards are being played, you're probably pretty sure that people are lying, but having the guts to challenge them can be difficult because there are so many points on the line. So that is Spicy. Another semi-recently played game is World Exchanges. One of the best games I played in the last year. This is an economic filler game by Emperor S4, as you are buying and selling these different buildings and tracking your funds on this kind of cash flow line, ticking these boxes as you go, which will increase the value of the buildings that you've collected. Again, check out my review of this one. I've played this quite a few times already. I am flat out in love with it. I think it is absolutely fantastic, and yeah, every game I played this one I've loved more and more. It's just absolutely great to play, and I think this was the first time I played it at 3 players. Every other time I played it with 2, and I actually think the market is even more dynamic and more interesting with 3 because it refreshes more often, and that happened in the game that we played. And yeah, adore it. That is World Exchanges. Continues to be an absolute favourite. Also played a 3-player game of Rome in a Day. So I taught this to 2 other people who hadn't played it yet, and I think it went down extremely well. So this is an I Split You Choose game, as you're trying to build out this little puzzly tile tableau, matching the buildings with the adjacent coloured tiles, basically, and you're getting points. Very simple scoring system, but it is all about that I Split You Choose mechanism. A lot of the play is simultaneous, So it scales remarkably well, 2 to 5 players, takes around 15 to 20 minutes to play, and it's just an absolute joy. So again, I think this was another one that came right down to the wire, and it's just wonderful. So that is Rome in a Day. Kind of leaning on giving this one a commendation. With more plays, that might be the case. But for now, I'm just going to slightly sit back and think, let's wait and see if time will either make this one rise or make it fall slightly after I've seen everything the game has to offer. But right now, I'm loving it. Back to an older favourite now. So a lot of those games are very newly played for me. But an older favourite is Trombone. So I played a 2-player game. This is a 2-player only game of Trombone. This is a strange one, which definitely has been inspired by games like Lost Cities, if you're familiar with that classic Reiner Knizia 2-player game. This one uses a multi-use card system, as you are adding these cards into these rows, which will either trigger scoring, and then you are playing cards into columns in front of you, basically playing them in numerical order without breaking that pattern. And they will be multiplied by these kind of multiplier cards. But it's all about a timing exercise. So once you're in a position of power and you've outscored or outbuilt runs of your opponent, that's when you want to trigger the relevant cards scoring. But a big twist in this game is money management. So you really do need to make sure that you keep cards back and transfer it into money. Otherwise, you're going to be out of pocket and leave yourself out of options. I think we had a pretty neck and neck game in the end of it, but at the start of the game, I just managed to trigger a few scorings before my opponent did and pull ahead, and that ended up really helping me, because later in the game there was definitely the margin and gap between me and my opponent was squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, but those earlier scoring phases just managed to pull me past the finish line. If you don't know about this game, and you like 2-player games and you regularly play light ones, but ones that require thought and hand management, Trombone is one of the best ones, and definitely, I would say, even a borderline essential 2-player only game. So that is Trombone. On to the last kind of filler game, I suppose. We played, I think it was a 2-player game of Next Station London, just to finish off a games day. This one, I think it was a candidate for one of my fillers of the year last year. I know it was nominated for the Splitto. It's a flip and right style game as you're building up this kind of railway network, trying to cross the Thames as many times as you can, multiplying the number of stations you've visited in one square with the amount of squares you've passed through. So it's another multiplication game. But you are trying to connect all these different railways that you're building, because each round you use a different colour, to the same junctions to get even more points. I think this was probably one of the lowest scoring games we've had, because just the order in which the cards were being drawn would just kept on leaving us blocked, not being able to make moves. But really nice game, very breezy, very enjoyable, and I'm still yet to try the Next Station Tokyo kind of standalone expansion to this one. Let me know if you've played that Next Station Tokyo and if it's worth getting. And it doesn't warrant having both of them, I suppose, is what I want to know. But a nice one, Next Station London, kind of found its place in my collection and regularly gets played. Moving on now to a slightly bigger game. We played a 3-player game of Alhambra. So recently covered this one on a 3 Golden Oldies video. Talking about some older games that are still worth playing. Definitely still feel that way about Alhambra. Very simple tile placement game, which kind of merges a bit of kind of area majority, where you are trying to have the most of a certain type of tile when it comes to scoring. But the way you acquire the tiles is very interesting, as you're trading in these different currency cards to get the matching tiles and then place them on your little tableau, trying to increase your border wall as much as you can to get even more points. But it really is about how you manage that hand of cards, because if you play with if you pay with the exact right amount of change, then you get a back-to-back turn, and you can end up stringing several turns together. Love the purity of this game; it's very enjoyable. Now, I think some chinks in the armour have started to appear with this one for me. So the 2-player game, I like the punchiness of it. It's very quick, but it does use this bots player, which isn't the most enjoyable to compete with. It's a bit arbitrary and a bit forced in there. But when it comes to a 3-player game, and of course a 4-player game, then and even more than that, because this game does actually scale up to 6, I think the game can drag on too long, and that did become apparent. So I think for that reason, I'm probably not going to keep hold of this one long term, because I do have very simple tile placement games such as Acropolis, which I'd probably rather play than this. But I don't want to sound negative on this game, because I do think it's very good. I think it's very enjoyable, and there's a few twists in this game that I think haven't really been replicated or improved on. Again, that currency mechanism, that border wall, and the back-to-back buying, by paying the right change. I really like that part of the game, but it would have been nice for it to be a little bit quicker, I think, when it comes to those higher player counts. And if there was another 2-player option that wasn't so, I don't know, just so random when it comes to proxying another player. But they are nitpicks. I think the game does hold up well and definitely still worth playing. That is Alhambra. And the final game I've played during these last couple of weeks, and probably one of my favourites, this is Rise. So Rise, one of my favourite games that came out last year. This is a game all about climbing tracks. So basically you're going to use this very cool drafting system using this card row. You're going to pay money the further you go to the right, but you're going to get more bonuses the more you pay. And all of these different cards basically let you climb up the different tracks, get you combos, let you fight against losing points, let you get, basically there's so much variability here in what you can do. And I definitely approached this game way differently than I did last time. So I remember playing with almost identical setup, bearing in mind that there is modularity here. I was quite reluctant to increase my money engine, because when you increase your money engine, you lose these environment points, which can end up costing you the ability to do different things, which are very important. But I managed to kind of neglect that, balance my environment, and end up building a quite nice cash engine quite early in the game. So I was generating more money and had that flexibility to draft exactly what I wanted to. And that just about swung the game for me and just carried me through, and maybe just get the win here. But this is such an enjoyable game, very easy to play, very satisfying when you pull off those big turns, and it feels like a grand roll and write game despite having no pencil and pen or paper in sight. One of my favourite games of last year, as I said. Definitely feels unique and distinct to anything else out there. And I love getting this one to the table. And this latest play was certainly no exception to that. So that is Rise, a wonderful game. So that concludes the video. That's all the games that I've been playing over the last couple of weeks. Most of these are, as you see, games that I've played for the first time quite recently. Just trying to rack up some more plays and get some use out of them. But hopefully now I've got over most of the games that I purchased at the UK Games Expo, I can start digging into my kind of tried and tested favourites that I've neglected for quite a long time, actually, because I'm always playing new stuff. But we'll get there. And it's always nice to always keep the ball rolling and trying new things, because that's what keeps us interested in the hobby. But hopefully you have enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel and check out my other content too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.